Hey, witches.
Good evening, witches. How are you?
Hi.
How is everybody?
I have my notes for
Oh my
tonight.
gosh, the days are shorter. It's so dark now.
It's so dark so
It's
early.
so dark so early.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm still running the AC here and I'm cold. I turned it on. I turned it back on because it was
You
muggy
did?
today.
Well,
yeah.
we're going from like 68 in the evening to then 82, 85 in the daytime. It's like you want to be warm at night and then cool during the day. It's a whole conundrum with Florida.
Just a conundrum, indeed.
So tonight we are going over the homework, kind of the homework we said would be a good idea for you guys to do to learn the cards better for the Suit of Swords. Hey, Tracy.
Hi, Tracy.
And I have to say, it is it is not easier than the last two suits, which we went over were Wands and Cups. You know, action and passion, and then you had the emotions and kind of your spiritual side. This is all about our thoughts. So tonight I am going to get pretty personal with a story about me and my brain and the journey that we've been on together. And Kat's going to do the same thing, kind of. I think that we know the start of each other's stories because we had to talk about it, but I don't know. She doesn't know how mine's going to unfold, and I don't know I don't know what she's going to say about hers. Did you want to go first?
I can.
You go first. Okay. So she is
Okay, you guys, this is this is like when your thoughts lead you down the wrong path. Let's put it that way. So, So this is a story of one night. It's about 15 years ago. I'm a single chick, I'm out in the bar and I meet this guy. He's playing pool. My favorite bar to go to is a Red Balloon in Kansas City. If anybody's there that knows Red Balloon, hello. Anyway, it's a really fun karaoke bar and cheap beer and pool tables and stuff. So anyway, one night I'm there. It was kind of like my hangout and stuff. And I meet this guy and he's playing pool. So we start playing pool together and he's not drinking yet. And so then he's like, okay, wait, I got to call in. He was on like, whatever it is when you're like out on bail or something like that. And then
did you say bail?
I said,
what? What? I thought he was like an on-call doctor or something.
This is the part of the brain when your brain's not really working and maybe you're thinking with other parts of your body and not exactly your brain. But anyway, a few beers in and he's like, wait, I got to call in. I got my number up tonight because don't talk to me about red flags. I don't see them till
the deck is full of red flags, but
I don't see them until way later. Anyhow, so he's like, well, I got to call in. And if they don't have my number, if I don't have to go in and pee tomorrow, then I can drink tonight. So at this point, what do I know? Okay, so what do I know about the guy, right? I know that he's out on bail or some kind of trouble. I don't know if it was bail, but he was in some kind of probation thing with Johnson County and he was having to call in and he was having a piss test and he wasn't supposed to be drinking. So that was my first red flag. But me with my surge of mental energy and insight, he was so cute. It was so much fun. I had several beers in me. I'm like, seems like a good idea, right? Okay, so there's my thoughts taking me down this road, although I must confess it might have been other body parts that had something to do with the decision, but here we go. Surge of mental energy, like, yeah, this is a good choice for me. Let's explore this. So then, of course, a short time later, I'm like, was this really a good choice for me? This is a card about choices, like, I'm weighing the pros and cons. And of course, I'm always the fun girl. So I just want to have fun.
She just wants to party.
I want to party and cut loose and then I'll deal with the consequences later. So guess what I chose? I keep seeing the guy. And then, of course, he does things along the way where he's like not attentive and I'm like having to call him and he's not showing up and stuff like that. And I'm like, this is not looking too good for me. I have a feeling there's going to be maybe some heartbreak in this, but of course I keep going because I always have to see through whatever I start, regardless of how rough the road gets or how bad it is. I almost have to see it through to the end because it's just the way I roll. But it did take some time to reflect and kind of step back and go like, I wonder, like, as you go on, this relationship probably lasted 4 to 6 weeks. And, the things that happened along the way, I'm like, yeah, all along the way, I kept thinking, golly, is this really where I should be? Or how do you break it off at this part? So this is me sort of like taking a step back and, as you have these experiences and you're like analyzing, oh, whatever. I started it. I'm going to finish it. So about this time in the relationship, I already know things are failing, but I'm on a total self-destructive path where I'm like, I don't really care because I have to see this through to the end, right?
So you're self-destructing. You're like, I'm just gonna go ahead with it.
Yeah, because like I started down this path and I feel like I need to complete this cycle.
Cycle, this phase.
But at some point in time, I'm like, this is a really unsatisfying relationship, and I'm not going to get out of it anything. And it ended up, I mean, we didn't like break up like bad. It was just like, yeah, I'm not going to see you anymore. And I don't know who wasn't going to see who first, but I mean, he was living with his mother, so that had something to do with it. So anyway, so this is me like starting moving away from this situation where it's like, listen, this is just going to be heartbreak. So you need to start moving off, right? And leaving this harmful situation behind you. So then, of course, I'm not exactly honest. This is me not being honest with myself about the situation and sort of sugarcoating it and being like, it wasn't that bad, was it? And, this is another thing I do in relationships. I go back and back. I go back and forth,
deception,
right? Yeah, exactly.
Deceiving yourself.
So, and then of course, once you get me, okay, I speak about for myself. So once I get in these situations where I keep going back, then I start feeling like I'm sort of stuck there. I'm in this like cycle,
like
a loop. Yeah. Like
this
feedback loop where I'm just sort of stuck. So I'm like, I feel like I'm stuck because I keep myself stuck, or I think that I'm stuck. And then, of course, there's sleepless nights and worry and anxiety about how the hell am I going to get out of this mess?
And all the mistakes that you've already made.
Yeah, because once you've invested so much in it, then you're like, oh, gosh, maybe, I mean, when do you call it quits? But finally, when you get stabbed in the back enough and you're like, you hit the rock bottom with the relationship and you're like, and even got in the ear, because this card, he's got a knife in the ear. Then you realize it's over and done. And then
rock bottom.
And then
move on.
You get to do it again.
But with new insight, right? Tracy, thank you for helping her with at least the first flag, because I was sort of counting and I think there was 10 plus flags going on there somewhere.
All right. I can't, what? Here's the thing. I don't even remember his name. I think it might've been Chris, but I don't know. I can't remember what he looks like. I can't remember anything except I probably should have walked away that first night. That probably would have been a good idea.
So you're wiser now, right? Because the whole thing is that we come out from ace to 10 wiser than we were.
So now you guys know just how stupid I was, at least at one point in time. When it comes to picking men. So anyway, that's my sword story.
All right. It's very hard for me to make up fake stuff. So I went ahead and went deep with this. And in case anybody else suffers from PTSD, that is where my story is going. I'm not getting into the specifics of it, but I'm going to let you know how I went through my journey of everything. So while I was in my psychology program, because if you didn't know this, everybody who becomes a psychologist or a counselor, they all started with trying to fix themselves first. Usually that's, you don't even know things are kind of wrong, but then you get into stuff and you're like, epiphanies start happening. This was year 3 in my program, and starting to read through some of the stuff, I was like, oh my gosh, do I have PTSD? Like, why is all this familiar? I just thought anxiety was super normal. Wait, what? So this was, this is supposed to be like a mental surge. And for me, it was sort of clarity. I was like, oh, maybe my anxiety stems from more than just everyday stuff. So that was my first clue. I was like, oh boy, let's explore this. All right. So after I've read through stuff, I've done online things like If anybody's ever thought they had something, you kind of go down a rabbit hole for a little while. I kind of had to start acknowledging for lack of better words, the part of me that was like damaged from an event or several, and then like my normal me. So I started feeling like I was living as two people, and I was only like popping in on the damaged side to be like, hey, so what's going on over there? You know, I kind of pushed you way back in the back of my mind and thought, oh, it's all better. Everything's fine. Don't worry about it. It started creeping up. So this is, you know, the choices of how far do I go in acknowledging my symptoms that were starting to really show, or I was at least acknowledging them. And anxiety was the big specific one that was really, really noticeable. So the choices of how do I balance these two sides of myself, or am I going to pick one and ignore the other? And it was probably like a year later, I actually got diagnosed with PTSD and just had an all-out cry fest about it, because when the doctor told me I had it, and then she handed me my paper, this is with the VA, so I'm a veteran, I was in the Navy, and that's where my PTSD comes from. But when she handed me my paper, it said mental disability on it. And I was like, no, I take it back. No, I don't want that. Because for me, my brain was always like my superpower. I'm really smart. I remember things well. Like, it's always just been about my brain. So to hear I have a mental disability, I was like, no, not possible. Not me. I can't. So that actual diagnosis is what really, really broke me down. That's when I started to like fall apart a little bit, because I didn't know how to live with feeling that way, like trying to acknowledge that about myself. You know, it was a shock. And then I was okay with saying I had PTSD or that I had anxiety, but the actual words of like mental disability, I was like, no, I don't, no. Cause that just shoots like everything that I think about myself, where my confidence comes from. Like, it just shoots it down. So that was my heartbreak. Then, of course, after having like a lot of crying and just trying to understand what it means to live with something that you actually don't get better. I didn't realize that back then, but I was like, now what do you do? So I had to take a step back from a lot of stuff and really look at how I interacted with people, how I interacted with my future husband, how, you know, in my dating world, like how I've been for the last 10 years. I was like, oh my gosh, I started seeing things pop up everywhere that were from, you know, this event that I had in the Navy. And it's like, oh, okay. So there was a lot of reflection over the stuff and how it affected me that I did not see before. You know, it took that reflection and that time away, like to just sit with yourself and start going through things. And I wrote a lot. I journaled a lot when I did this. So this is the card of self-destruction. And the way that I sort of how would you say that?
Self-destructed?
Self-destructed was that I started pulling back from everybody. I started thinking there was more things wrong with me than there actually were. I sort of overanalyzed it all and was like, oh God, well, I'm damaged. And I'm probably really awkward at parties. And so I became much more self-conscious. That was my self-destructive behavior. You know, so I would have to like sit in my room and just do like crafts or something for a whole day. I didn't feel like I could interact with the world because I was still trying to figure out who I was. And this is like 3 years later, just who I was with this diagnosis. I'm like, I don't know that I know how to be yet. So this is over a pretty long period of time that this all happens. But after my self-destructive sort of behaviors where I was pulling myself back from everybody who truly cared about me, I decided to seek counseling. I needed to get out of my head, which was the dark waters, the rough waters, all of this stuff. And I needed to get it out. So I enrolled in counseling with the VA, and I was in that for 3 years, and it was wonderful. It helped a lot. I didn't know what to do. It's just like, you go in there, you just talk, whatever's on your mind. It was like, just talk about it. So sometimes it was about the things that happened to me, and sometimes it was just about my family. And it felt good to have a friend again. At least that was what the relationship felt like, where I could just talk and I didn't feel like I was burdening her with anything, because that was her job. and we liked each other. Like we both loved crystals, and she was an old hippie, and I loved her. I loved her so much. So after that was me like trying to get to safer shores and figure a way out. 3 years in therapy, and I was like, I'm cured. I'm fine. Everything's good, right? You walk out of there. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna stop going to therapy now. I'm good. I've been good for a long time, so I'm probably like all better. Self-deception, 100%. You don't realize that at the time because you're on this sort of like high, or you're really up about everything, and you remember some of your coping strategies, or you go through stuff, but really, if you think that ending therapy is like, oh, that means I'm fixed or I'm cured and that things can't creep back in. That was where I was deceiving myself. I wasn't expecting it in the future. So we fast forward in the future to another 3 years, and my anxiety started coming back. I wasn't addressing it. I wasn't doing a good job with my own mental health, or taking time for myself. My job was crazy. I was traveling. There was a lot going on. And I felt very trapped by the anxiety that I had, and I didn't know how to address it. And I didn't even really know that that's what it was. I was like, I've just always been this way. That's just who I am, So I started seeing like other things. Well, if I acknowledge that, then I'll do this. And the stuckness that I started to feel again in my own brain was really hard. And it was obviously, again, just from me. It was in my head, which is a big part of this card. All these things that I thought were stuff that I couldn't get out of, or that, was never going to change. So don't discuss it, because there's no curing that. There's no fixing it. So then what? Like, what do you do with it? This was me feeling trapped by all the things in my head, which of course led to a lot of worry and anxiety about, again, how do I act around people? How do I tell people, number one, that I'm having a hard time? That was probably the biggest thing. And I spent about 2 years sort of like, okay, it's getting hard, but that's all right. I can handle it. And, and it's like, less and less sleep at night, or trying to recover. I always felt like I needed a down day. It was like, gosh, I'm just exhausted. I really need a down day. There's all this stuff spinning in my head still. And this is when I dove deepest into my witchcraft practice. Like every single day was about my practice, because I thought that's what was really going to help me. I was like, no, I just need my spiritual practice and I'm going to be fine. All right, this year, this was the year that I finally was like, I'm done trying to help myself help this. And I finally went to a doctor, went to another psychologist, talked about like everything that was going on with the anxiety. And now, after I hit that rock bottom, I left the office with a prescription for a anti-anxiety medication. And life is great. And it's only been like, I don't know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks or something. So that all just happened during the course of us teaching the tarot. But, my life away from this has just been crazy, I guess. A lot. It's just been a lot this year, the 7 year. We keep saying that. And now you guys know, like, it got to be that much for me, where I was like, yeah, I need help. I'll accept help through drugs. That's fine. I need it to get myself back. So there's my big secret.
Well, that was a really long period of time where all of that
from
happened.
Start to finish.
Yeah,
it was about
was like
8 years.
Yeah, mine was like 4 or 6 weeks.
But the cards,
but I burn through them really fast, usually.
Well, and remember that the cards explain to us like the daily things that are going on. They're not supposed to be big life events. So like none of these cards for me represent my actual PTSD event. That would be more in like the cups section, of the cards. But this is all the ways that mentally I was trying to deal with or cope with or figure out all the stuff going on in my head that I didn't always connect the two together, the PTSD event and the and like the anxiety that I was having or the way that I acted. For me, I really just used to be like, no, this is me. This is just how I am. Like, this is normal for me. Because I had lived with the symptoms for so long. I just thought I was okay. And then, and then you can learn something. I think what both of us probably realize when you have this first card and there's the epiphany moment, almost like a thought epiphany of like, oh, you read a passage somewhere in a book, you hear something on TV or in a podcast, I feel like there's something that sparks the clarity where you almost have like these two pieces have been coming together for a long time. And then all of a sudden you get that one piece of information. It's like, bam, now you know. That is what the ace represents. And then the journey from there can be 4 to 6 weeks or 8 years, depending on how how far you go into the cards and what you think of them. I bet I could probably, for me, because I am so much in my mind, I bet I could do like a day where I have a thought about creating something. And then it's like, oh, do I spend time doing that? I could probably do all these cards in one day through my thoughts. So if you want to do that with your homework stuff for the story, make it like one day where you're just like, here's how I trail through my day. And like, maybe you didn't get the project done. That's what you're like, I give up. I don't have this skill. I'm done. It's gone. That's it.
The day's over. Time for a glass of wine.
That's it. I just know I'm giving up on this. And this isn't always like a give up card, but it is telling you to walk away and like find something
You're done
else.
here.
Yeah. Like there's nothing else here for you.
The great thing about this card is like what's next is better.
Yeah.
Because you've hit rock bottom.
Yes.
And
there will be more clarity.
Yeah. So you'll go on to the next cycle of cycling through these.
Yeah.
All of these thoughts,
mental cards.
So
all this stuff floating around in our head. Oh, thank you, Selena. Yeah, it's to be authentic with you guys so that like I've always said it should seem like everything is really put together for me. I've had a really amazing life, and yet there's still struggles that come up. My father-in-law passed this year. My son got diagnosed with epilepsy, and he has major seizures. He just had 3 on Monday. So just, there's all of that. I lost 2 animals this year. So it was a heavy year for me. And I finally got to the point where I was like, I'm not me right now. Like I can tell I'm not me. I was, having cries every single day about things that just bothered me. And I was like, usually I can think about this and not cry. And now I'm just crying like every single time. So it really helped me, or it's helping me, I guess. I don't know. But I think the other thing with getting help or exploring stuff that's going on in your mind is there's a big difference when people are getting help, people who want it and they're ready to change, and other people who are like, they want a fix and they don't really want to address the stuff that's going on. So when we're seeking clarity within our minds, it helps to get perspective with that, whether you're journaling or looking back through things, and then also talking to people who know you or know the situation, it can help bring things to light that you might not have thought of. So I always talk to my mom about everything. She was not here for the beginning of my journey. She still lived in Kansas City, but she's been here for the last 4 years of it. So she kind of watched, she knew. And then I think when I started taking the anxiety medication, it got better really fast, huh?
Yeah.
It was like my mood improved like that. I was like, oh, there I am.
Well, it's interesting when I'm around her all the time, so I know how she acts, if you will. I know her behaviors, and so when I saw the first couple of days of the medication, I didn't say anything because it wasn't her, and I was like, okay, the medicine's got to like kick in and start doing its thing, and you got to get on this like kind of like even keel. So
yeah,
I didn't say a word about what I was like. Okay. And now she's like her normal self, her normal happy self.
I feel like myself.
And she just seems a lot more at peace, with her life, and because it's
with
like,
all of
like she
struggles.
said, like it's a hard year,
It's a hard year. Yeah.
The father-in-law, the son, the animals,
and
then she's caretaking for her mother-in-law.
Yeah.
And so that's like a huge
I've never done that
responsibility.
before. Yeah. Never had to take care of something
responsibility.
before.
And she's little, she's a little old lady. How old is Judy?
She's 82. She'll be 83.
She's 82
in December.
And at 82 you're declining, and so there's that. So she's really like,
and then
very sad to know that you're going to take care of somebody and they're waiting to die, or their next big thing is, I'm going to be gone from this world.
Yeah, that's been, I didn't grow up with people who, got old and died. Like I didn't have that. We moved around a lot, and it was just like my family. And You know, I just have not been through this before. So it's been taxing on my emotions for real. Yeah. Like this year. Woo.
Yeah.
So if anybody is feeling that energy also, I sympathize and empathize with you because yes, but guess what? In 8 year, next year, it's gonna be great. Everything is gonna get better. Yeah. Because it's an 8 year instead of a 7. Yeah. It's gonna all balance out. And things that we've done this year where we've really struggled, where we've, you know, been at our breaking points, even with, you know, figuring stuff out, because 7 is the number that looks back over everything. So there's lots of reflection time and there's just the heavy stuff. The 8 brings balance to everything, and it shows you that all of those things had purpose and they start to really line up to bring gifts, you know. And then the next year after that is the 9 year, which is like all the bounties just come forward and the humanitarian efforts to bring everybody things that they are looking for and want. So I'm looking forward to that. That's what I'm looking forward to. So those were our stories.
That's our stories.
Yeah.
That's the homework. We hope you did your homework.
Yeah.
I'll tell you something. I have realized that the homework was harder than I thought it was going to be. So, you know,
not getting easier.
I mean, we didn't like do the homework before we made up the homework assignments.
No.
And then when we're doing the homework, we're like, shit, this is hard. This is hard. You really have to think about it. So you really have to dig deep sometimes to get to a place where you can like tell a story, unless it's something that you make up. And I'm with you. I don't want to just make something up.
No.
I need to think about something that's happened in my life. Like, how can I relate this? Because that's what's going to help me remember the cards too.
Yeah. And so one of the things that we did to help us is we wrote single words on the back of them. So when we look at a picture, so this is the 10 of Swords, and we just wrote on there rock bottom. And it was like, okay, that's going to be the end of the story. So you have like the beginning where you have some kind of clarity, and then you have like rock bottom, time to move on. This is over. Yeah. Now you're just filling in, you know, a balance through all of the worries and fears. It's a lot in that mental space. So I hope that you guys will do it. Be vulnerable with yourself, admit things to yourself or someone else, tell your story. Yeah. I think that being able to share your personal experiences, even with us, please write. If you want to write it out in the comments and everything, yes, I will read it and respond to every single one. But I think being able to be vulnerable in a place where you tell something about yourself, it's like, then you know you're heard. We're ready to hear your story, to listen, to be here for you and be like, yeah, I get that, you know. We don't all have the same story, which is wonderful. It makes life very colorful. But I'm sure we've all been through some of the same things or had the same pressures in our head, the worries, the fears, the doubts, the self-destructive habits.
Selena said,
things.
Damn, you're living my past
for you.
About me. Girl, I feel you.
She's having to relive her past. She told me one part of the story and then she goes, I don't remember his name. And I'm like, is this real? Like, what are you, I didn't know her for many years. I lived, you know, away and abroad and all of that. So I don't know all of her little 4 to 6 week flings. And this is one I was like,
my bad decisions at the bar.
Bad decisions at the bar. That could be a country song. I love it. We need to write to somebody. That sounds like a really good country song.
It does, doesn't it? Although I would choose to make it more pop because I would be singing like Taylor Swift. So.
Oh my gosh!
Hey, you guys, I don't know if you heard, but
she's still stalking Taylor Swift.
I'm stalking Travis and Taylor, and
gosh.
Travis is going to Argentina to spend like I don't know. He's got to be back on Sunday, but I just read this. I was like, oh, I'm so excited for them.
In love with love over here. She just wants to see a love story.
That's me.
Yeah,
I love hopeless romantic.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say thank you guys for joining us tonight. Tracy, Jenny, Selena, Kristen. That is all the names that I see right now. But anybody else who's there who didn't write into the comments, thank you so much for joining us. We hope you guys got something from this, that you learned something, and that you can make your story now to help remember the cards so that when you see them, it gives them more life than just that, you know, 2D print on the card. Yeah. And we will see you for our last meetup on Monday where we go over the Pentacles.
Ooh.
Get ready for it, you guys. This is all things, related to our external world, including wealth and property and things like that.
Yeah.
So we will see you on Monday.
All right. Good
Bye,
night,
you
all.
guys.
Bye.